And I think we are ready to go. There's a good number of folks in the chat. Okay. So, come on in. How was the weekend? You guys have a good weekend? Okay? No complaints? Have you figured out things to do on the weekend? What are you guys doing on the weekend? You find ways to have a good time? That's good. That's important. Yeah, I've also found ways to have a good time. I guess that's what we must do, right? If we don't find ways, then we won't have a very good time, will we? Any stories? Anything interesting happened recently? Anything in the news? Not really. More crappy weather this week. I'm kind of glad it didn't snow today because a few days ago they were predicting snow for today, which means we would have missed yet another in-person class. Welcome, come on in. Come on in. And so, yeah, as you saw in my email this morning, I think it was the storm shifted, right? And so now it might like rain later tonight, but it's probably not going to snow. At least not anytime soon. So we dodged that, but if you have later classes today, you might want to bring an umbrella. I don't know. Okay, so if there are no stories, we can kind of get right into it. Maybe we can look at the syllabus just to see where we're at. That's always a good thing to do, right? Look at this one. We can just look at it very quickly. So we are here, right? Today's Monday the 15th. Enlightenment. Today's a big day, right? The Buddha achieves enlightenment, so we can discuss what does that mean. Next time we'll get into the Four Noble Truths, and if you've looked at Moodle, you'll see that I did not post Kyon again. So what can you do if you want to read Kyon and I didn't post it again? You can go back into that big file I sent you in the beginning, right? So it's the whole book is all in one file, so you've got it. It's just I'm not posting it every time. And then next week, the Buddha will reach final enlightenment, which is a polite way of saying he will die. And people use a lot of polite language when they talk about the death of a Buddha. It's a little hard to translate these sorts of things, but if you do it literally, you kind of lose the information that he's dying. But if you do it more directly, if you do it figuratively, you lose the information that he's dying. But if you do it more literally, it sounds kind of like irreverent or something. And then in 2.5 weeks, we've got this exam. So not no assignments on the horizon, but the exam is coming. And so next week, I will give you a review sheet, and we can talk more about studying approaches and things I want you to know and all that sort of stuff. So this week we're still cruising. Just keep up with the reading. That's the best way to prepare for the exam, is to just keep up with stuff. But any questions about all that? Feeling good? All right, good. So let's get into it. So last time we had the 4 sights. We talked about asceticism. We saw this kind of scary image of the Buddha. I don't think we totally completed that conversation, though, did we? We didn't get through all of the details of asceticism, so we can pick up with that today. So just a reminder, the 4 sights, these are my words: an intimate encounter with the inevitable sufferings of life. What were those 3 or 4 things that he saw? I guess we can just go through all 4 of them. What were the 4 sights? Chana, what's wrong with those men? Joseph. Yes, very good. Old man, sick man, corpse, holy man. And that's a perfect kind of thing to put on exam, right? Now, just so I'm not scaring you, you don't have to memorize a bunch of things. It's going to be open note, so I'm not going to drill you in terms of memorization, because people will be taking it online, and as we all know, it's pretty easy to Google things even if I don't tell you to. So I've just sort of stopped fighting that battle and made it open note. But that being said, it'll be more interpretive, and that is a good sort of term to bring up in the exam. And even if you can Google it, and again, I don't want you to Google it on the exam, but even if you can list these things off based on your notes, let's say, it's still, the question remains open, why do these things matter? What do they mean? And of course, that's what we talked about in class last time, right? So the takeaway that I'm trying to press upon you is that these are all sufferings that are part of our lives, right? They're kind of inevitable in the sense that we will all die one day, we will all get sick one day, and we will all get old one day if we're lucky, right? I guess the old one is the most optional of the three. And of course, the holy man takes it in sort of a new direction. But this language of being an intimate encounter, I think, is key, right? It allows us to really consider what it means to be sick, to be old, and again to die, right? Because that's exactly what Keanu Reeves was thinking about in the movie that we saw. All right, people are kind of flooding in now. The latecomers. All right, welcome everybody. Come on in. Of course, class started 10 minutes ago, but you know who's counting. So, all right. Now, any questions about that? The 4 sites? We feel pretty good about that? One question I asked you is why is a poor person not included in that list? What did we come up with a good answer for that? Why is a poor person not one of the 4 sites? You could put it that way, but it's a very different matter of emphasis, right? I mean, when we think about here's a subway ad. I haven't seen in a while because I don't ride the subway anymore. But there's some kind of vitamins or something called Hims, and I imagine there's probably a version of this called Hers that I just didn't pay attention to. Not that I really even paid attention to this one, but there's something about like male baldness or something like that. It's like that's optional. You guys know what I'm talking about? Where it's like here's this thing that a biological problem. That's optional. Do you know what I'm talking about? Has anybody seen this ad campaign? Clearly, it kind of struck a chord with me, right? And so I feel like it's kind of a particularly insidious program because basically it's taking these observations, right? Frankly, even if you have like good genes or whatever, when you get old, your hair is going to get messed up somehow, right? It's going to turn white. You could dye it. It might fall out. You could get like hair plugs. You could get the Trump look or whatever, right? Your skin's going to get wrinkly. You can get Botox, right? And so when we see these 4 sites, we often think like, that's optional. And how is it optional? Is if you can pay for it, right? And there's some truth to that, Your teeth get messed up, you go to the dentist and you pay for it. Your body gets messed up, you go to the doctor and you pay for it, right? And especially in this country, right, where healthcare is such a divisive issue, some people have it, some people don't. And there is a sense that we can throw money at these problems and make them go away. You guys know what I'm talking about? It's kind of the American way, in fact, where it's like, oh, you're sick, just go to the hospital, they'll take care of you. And in fact, there's a lot that we can do. So I don't mean to say that these things are worthless, but maybe a major takeaway from this story is that in the end, no matter how much money you throw at these problems, they will not go away. Would you guys agree with me? Money will take you pretty far, right? I mean, when Trump got COVID not so long ago, threw a bunch of money at it, threw the top team of health doctors at it, and they made it go away, right? Most Americans who get COVID are not so lucky to be able to throw so much money at it, American tax dollars at it. But at the same time, we do live in a time where maybe these 4 sites are not always so heavy upon us, right? If I lived 200 years ago, I'd probably already be dead, right? I probably had some infection that would have killed me by now. If you've ever taken antibiotics to, I don't know, take care of whatever, a tummy problem, an infectious problem, that sort of thing killed people regularly, right? Vaccines now, actually, I just signed up for the vaccine, which I'm excited about. Vaccines have saved so many lives, right? We sort of take these things for granted. And there's a sense that behind all of that, what gives you access to all of that is money, right? So why do people suffer from disease and old age? Because they're poor, of course. They can't afford to not suffer, which again is a lie. And I think that's, again, a major takeaway from this 4 sites episode is that these are waiting for all of us. No matter how much money you throw at it, you will encounter these things in some capacity. Okay, questions about that, 4 sites? Chat, how you guys doing? 4 sites, I feel like the chat has grown in numbers, at least a little bit. Okay, asceticism, that was the Buddha's response, right? He encountered these inevitable sufferings of life and coming back to the list that Jocelyn provided for us, he also encountered this holy person. The holy person was an ascetic, to put it another way, right? Is a holy person who was a renunciate. We use the language of renunciation shows up in the book. I think they call him a renunciate. What has he renounced? Maybe I can make that a question for you guys. What does an ascetic renounce? These are a lot of key vocab words. Brendan? Okay. I agree with you. That's sort of an abstract concept. And if we look here, avoiding indulgence, right? So that's kind of in line with what you're saying. That makes sense to me. Can we be more specific? What sorts of things get wrapped up in our desires? Mm-hmm. Also abstract. Can we get concrete? What kind of temptation? What tempts you, Sydney? Is it too early to talk about these things? Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we're all using good language here. Again, it's sort of up in the clouds, though. What sort of things would you like to indulge in that you can't indulge in because of COVID? Going places. Yeah, that's a nice one, right? So an ascetic does not go on vacation, right? They don't get on an airplane and fly to Cancun or something and hang out on the beach, right? That's a form of indulgence. And I'm not here to say there's anything wrong with that, right? I'm longing. Honestly, what actually this very particular thing is killing me too, right? I love to travel. It's been a big part of my life. It's one reason I'm an academic is I like to travel. It gave me a chance to, I don't know, travel all over the place, go to conferences, do research. I love it, right? I love traveling, and I've been stuck. I've been stuck for like a year, and all of you guys have too, right? So yeah, it's killing me. And when we think about what sorts of indulgences these folks are giving up, one could be just kind of like going to fun events. Very simple things though. Food. Food's a big one, right? Do you guys like to indulge in food? That's something that's actually still available to us for the most part. I guess you can't indulge in delicious restaurant food, which is another thing that kills me. Living in New York, right? There's all these good restaurants and stuff. I used to go to Chinatown like every week and get good groceries and have like dim sum and all this sort of amazing stuff, delicious tea and whatever. Can't do any of that, right? I guess you probably could. You could get it for takeaway, but then like, I don't know, there's nowhere to really eat it. It's cold outside, there's snow, right? It's just not really an option. You just gotta cook at home or do whatever you gotta do. I guess you guys are probably eating in the dining hall. So food is a big one, right? Look at the Buddha. Look at this picture of the Buddha. He has given up food. Pretty crazy stuff. He and his friends, they've all given up food. Bathing, right? We can still take showers. That's kind of nice, but these guys are not bathing themselves. We saw. Did we see the clip? Actually, I think we didn't have time. I prepared a clip for you, but we didn't watch it. Keanu had big dreadlocks, and he was all covered in dirt. We can see him again today. So, who are these ascetics? They're giving up all these indulgences, which again, abstractly we kind of understand, but concretely, very simple things that kind of bring pleasure to our day. Anything that you can find pleasure in, they are avoiding. Very extreme lifestyle, right? Self-discipline, avoidance of indulgence. Meditation. This is sort of an interesting one. How does meditation come into the ascetic program? I don't think we quite got into this, which again, it's a little bit of a review, but I think it's important enough to spend some time on it. Where does meditation come in? You probably thought, all right, this is Buddhism class, we're going to learn some meditation, and we will actually. More after this first exam, we'll get into meditation among other stuff related to meditation. How does meditation relate to this ascetic program? Are those part of the same tradition? I mean, if we look at the Buddha, what's he doing here? He's meditating, right? So how does meditation figure into asceticism? What do those have to do with each other? I watched Soul last night. You guys seen this movie? It's like a Disney Pixar movie that just came out a couple months ago. It's pretty good. It's cute. Yeah, it's a cute movie. Actually, what tuned me into it was there's a New Yorker article that criticized it and said they kind of got the, what to say, this word soul, right? There's a lot that hangs on it, like soul food, and he's got soul. Sort of the black culture soul is poorly represented in the film. I thought that was a really interesting critique. And when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of right. But it's still a cute movie. It just maybe the sort of cultural parts of it have some problems. And one major point of the movie, it's not really a spoiler alert as much as the theme, is about what do you think about when you live your life, right? As I was walking to school today, I had my headphones on, as I usually do when I'm walking around, and it made me think, kind of in line with this movie, and kind of in line with what I'm asking you about right here. I was not particularly in the moment. Have you heard this sort of language, being in the moment? You guys in the moment right now? I feel like you're pretty in the moment. That's probably why you come to class. It helps you be in the moment. I think people in the chat maybe are not quite as in the moment. I don't want to judge anybody prematurely, but it's a little harder to be in the moment when you're, in your house and your family members are eating breakfast behind you and whatever. And so, in any case, this idea of kind of being in the moment and then being sort of stuck on an idea. Have you ever gone for a walk and had this idea kind of hanging in your head? And you're walking, and you might even like walk right by somebody and they're like, "Hey, Bill." I was like, "Whoa, all right, I didn't see you there. Hey, my bad." Right? It's sort of the absent-minded professor kind of style. It's a little on brand for me. But I'm sure you guys have had this experience too, right? Where something's on your mind and it just takes you totally out of the moment and you're stuck on this thought. Have you ever had this experience before? You can cultivate this through meditation, right? So if we step into the body of the Buddha right there, emaciated, starving, right? This would not be a very comfortable way to be, right? Just sheerly sitting there would be painful, right? His guts are probably digesting themselves. All sorts of horrible stuff is happening, right? I'm sure his body aches, right? Because his muscles seem like they're atrophying and all sorts of horrible stuff. So how do you survive? How do you make it through? Well, what meditation can do is it can kind of take you away from that space, right? Go to your happy place, right? Imagine something more comfortable. Maybe you've heard, like when you're cold, people said, imagine a warm place, right? Imagine sunshine on your skin, something like that. So that's the sort of thing he's doing here initially, right? He totally grinds his body down, but then through meditation, he's able to cope with the pain. You see what I'm saying? It's almost like, it's almost like a pain medication or something. It numbs him to the pain. Obviously, he probably doesn't have access to ibuprofen back in the day, but there's something a little bit like that that's happening here. But he also concludes that this will not lead to liberation from suffering. Why does he conclude that? Why is this form of meditation? And one thing we'll learn is that there are many kinds of meditation. Why is this form of meditation not really doing it for him? What's the problem with this practice, Sydney? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's great. So one thing we saw in this particular telling of the life story of the Buddha is there's this grand vow at the beginning. Remember the grand vow? Liberate all beings from suffering, right? Liberate those who have not been liberated. So great. So Sydney's tapping back into that vow, a compassionate vow, an altruistic vow of trying to help other people, right? Whereas this is very individual focused. Even if he's practicing next to other people, he's pretty much only caring about himself, right? He's thinking about his own suffering and how to deal with his own suffering. So that's a great observation. Other thoughts? Why is this not the ultimate solution for the Buddha? This too will not lead to liberation from suffering. What's wrong with ibuprofen? If you injure yourself playing ultimate frisbee, which I try not to injure myself, it's another thing I miss. I wouldn't even call it an indulgence, but it's just something I love and have not been able to do really at all for the last year, is play ultimate frisbee. And it's very common for people to like get hurt in the NBA, for example. I think there was a pretty famous player. Was it Alonzo Mourning? I forget who it was, but who like his kidneys were kind of shot because he took too much ibuprofen. So you just take this pain medication to make the pain go away, and then you play and you get paid millions of dollars to do it. But eventually, the pain medication wears out, doesn't it? Right? So what's the parallel here is you can meditate and think about how great life is. You can do your gratefulness meditation or whatever sort of meditation you want to do and abstract yourself away from the sufferings of the world. But what happens when you're done? You're coming on right back, right? And in the case of ibuprofen, you might make your injury even worse, right? Because if you're injured and you don't feel the pain, you're going to injure yourself worse, right? And it might end your career or something. Now, maybe with the Buddha, it's not so extreme, but he's actually identifying a very specific type of meditation practice here and criticizing it and saying this will not lead to suffering. And so then he kind of ups the ante and he starts talking about desire. That's what Brendan got us started with, this idea of desire. He was saying, all right, I have a little bit of desire in my body and in my mind. Did we talk about this quotation? I teach too many classes. It's hard for me to keep everything straight. I think we got here, but we didn't quite discuss it, right? In the interest of time, I feel like you're getting the picture here, so we don't have to spend too much time on it. But he's basically saying, you know, a piece of wood will not light on fire if there's even a little bit of moisture. Do you guys have this experience? Any like Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts in the crowd? So he's using a metaphor, basically. If there's a little bit of desire in my body or in my mind, that's why I'm suffering. It's desire. And I think you guys were already kind of on this tip a little bit from the beginning. And in fact, I think there's a similar value system in our society, right? You know, I'm doing bad in my class because I'm lazy. I'm not achieving my goals because I'm weak, right? It's these desires. I just need to get rid of them and then I can be strong, right? And then I can get all the things that I want. Have you ever had this thought before? It happens to me too, right? There's a sense, just work a little harder and you'll get what you want. But of course, that's bullshit. And life doesn't always work that way. And so the Buddha experiments with this. He becomes the ultimate try-hard, right? He tries to get rid of all of the desire in all of his mind and all of his body. And does that work? Does he find what he's looking for? What do you think? Is he going to find what he's looking for by getting rid of desire? What would a life look like without desire? Maybe I'll try to get the chat involved. Chat, can you live without desire?
I'd say no.
Sam would say no. Why not?
There's no point. There's no point in, I guess, living if you don't desire anything. If there isn't anything you want in life.
So would you say our desires give our life meaning?
I guess a lot of the things that you do for others could give you meaning, but I guess that's also a desire, your desire to want to give for or do for others. So I guess not.
Yeah. Okay. I like Sam's really thinking about this. I appreciate it. And Cameron, I think she's sending them direct messages. But if with her permission, I'll just read them aloud. She said, without desires, you have nothing you'd want to do. Therefore, you wouldn't find joy in anything. You'd be pretty indifferent about everything so that you do and surround yourself with. Yeah. So I think Sam and Cameron are saying something quite similar here, where it's basically like, if you really think about it, you know, without desire, you don't get out of bed in the morning. Without desire, you don't have breakfast. Without desire, you don't come to class. Without desire, you don't learn anything. Without desire, you don't do anything, right? If you take away desire, you basically just die, right? You become this lump that the Buddha becomes here. Without desire, you might even stop breathing, right? Breathing is one of these sort of automatic systems, but you know, if you really kind of focus on it, maybe even that starts to go away, right? And again, that's what we see in this scene, right? It takes this kind of absurd notion that our sufferings are due to our weakness, are due to our desires, and it takes it to its logical conclusion. Like, okay, your desires cause your suffering. Let's stop them and see what happens, right? And of course, that's what the Buddha tried to do, and he didn't really find what he was looking for either. So here he's really experimenting with kind of two sides of asceticism. One is this, you know, no pain, no gain mentality and use meditation to try to grit your teeth and get through it, which again, is becoming sort of a backbone of American capitalism. Maybe backbone's an overstatement, but meditation is finding a happy home in the overworked, overstressed lives of American citizens. And I think it is for this reason. And he takes it even further and he says, all right, let's root out all the desires and then surely my suffering will end. But did his suffering end? No, he basically just almost died, right? That's kind of the only result. But the suffering sticks with him. And for the Buddhists, at least, if somebody did die of, I don't know what the term would be, exposure, maybe is the term, by losing all desire to live, all will to live, what will happen to them? Will their suffering end? Is this like a way to win the game in Buddhism? What would happen to him if he died in this moment? He'd just be reborn. It would start all over again, right? And so there's a sense that even if you suppress your desires, right? Even if you kind of shove them deep down inside of you and don't act on them like he's doing right here, they'll come back, right? They're still there. And desire is a deep part of why the world exists. There are these cosmogonic stories. I don't know if you probably don't know this word, cosmogonic. It just means the beginning of the cosmos, right? Cosmogony, where everything begins with desire. There's a moment of desire. The winds start swirling, the waters start gathering, and therefore things exist. And there's a similar sense, why do we exist? Why are we on this earth? A lot of it comes back to desire. If we didn't want to be here, we weren't attached to our existence in some capacity, then we wouldn't be here. You see a lot of things on Twitter and social media and elsewhere where people are like, I didn't ask to be here. I shouldn't have to take care of myself, right? Have you seen this sort of language before, right? I don't want to be here. I didn't ask to be here. But I think in a deep sense, even though this person is denying that they had some choice in being here, the fact of the matter is they do want to be here. You all want to be here, theoretically speaking, alive, right? Even folks who kill themselves, and I know this is sort of a heavy topic, but I would argue even they have some attachment to existence. Now, that existence might not be the way they want to exist, right? I guess I shouldn't speak about such grand topics, but at least in some very specific examples, there are those who have bad things that happen to them, and they say, oh no, my life is over, and then their life really is over, right? Not all cases follow that trajectory, but at least in some cases, right, where people feel overwhelmed by existence, I would argue it's not because they're not attached to their existence, it's because they're attached to their existence in being a particular way. And then when it's not that way, it's kind of unsatisfying. So in any case, this question of desire, it's a deep one, it's a big one, it's a big part of Buddhism, no question. And the Buddha is struggling with it here. And as this heavy element to our conversation shows, we are dealing with it as well, right? This is part of what it means to be alive, is to think about what role does desire play in our lives. Okay, ultimately, he comes to a middle way. Let's see, it's 8:15. This class goes to 9 o'clock. I think I'm not going to play the clip as much as it's fun to play. There's another clip I want to show you instead. I can only show so many clips, but I encourage you, you can go back and check it out if you're interested. Keanu Reeves having sort of a moment. A young girl named Sujata offers him food, and it's kind of this magical moment. It's like a very special rice porridge with some milk in it, and the way it's described in the book, it sounds unbelievable, right? Do you guys remember the description of the book? Let's see, can I find it? Austerity. Diamond Throne. Yeah, so chapter 8, page 53. So there's this village woman named Sujata. She skimmed the milk of 1,000 cows 7 times, mixed fresh rice and grain into the cream and boiled it. Within this mixture, the endless knot and other good luck signs clearly appeared, filling Sujata with joy. Because of these signs, her soothsayer predicted that she would achieve the nectar of immortality. Do you guys know what an endless knot looks like? You probably don't. Has anybody heard of this before? It's kind of hard to draw. Let's see if I can do it. Is this gonna work? forgive my kind of unskilled artistic abilities. It's something like, when you go like that. No, I messed it up. Looks something like this, and it goes like that, and then there's like another one down here, but it actually fits together nicely. It's something like that. I kind of messed it up, but you can use your imagination. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And so this is a sign of auspiciousness, the endless knot. There are 8 auspicious symbols in Buddha, really Buddhist culture all over the place. And so this endless knot appeared on top of this milk that she was like boiling down and skimming the milk 1,000 times. So it's this like incredible food. And the fact that it's milk, I feel like, is significant too, right? Obviously, milk is one of the first foods that humans eat. And, you know, it's true for really most animals, many animals at least. So there's a sense of being nourished in a way that he had not been nourished in a long time, right? He eats real food for the first time in years, right? After experimenting with effectively death, right? He really, you know, again, I brought up suicide a moment ago. It's a heavy topic, but he was basically on the brink of suicide, right? He was basically killing himself. And then he finally kind of brings himself back from that, right? He finds this middle way and comes back from the brink of death. And with that comes strength. And it's only after eating. We could call this self-care, right? There's this language of self-care that's floating around. We talked about that in class last time, I think, didn't we? And so he takes care of himself. You know, more specifically, Sujata takes care of him. And I think the gender here is also significant. The milk, the female. And so he's being fed by this nice woman, and he gains strength, and he is ready to take on the world. He sits under a tree. This is the famous scene. This image is a little bit weird, but I like it because it was painted on the wall of a cave in a place called Dunhuang. Have you guys ever heard of Dunhuang before? Dunhuang. It's a place in Central Asia, part of China. I read that this is one of the earliest depictions of a gun. Can you see this gun here? Yeah. So this is like 1,000 years ago. So this is the Buddha sitting under a tree, and he's being attacked by all these weird demons. And as you can see, he has extremely long arm here, right? And we'll talk about what he's doing there in a moment. And so it's this climactic scene where he's battling with Mara. Now, who is Mara? We just met him for the first time this week. We haven't met him before. Who's Mara? Mara? Question mark? Well, I mentioned he's battling with demons. Here we see demons and daughters of Mara. These are the daughters of Mara here. They're a little more conservatively dressed than in the Hollywood version. So why don't we just watch this scene rather than go through it first? Let's just watch it and check it out, shall we? This can be our clip of the day. I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, I think we're ready. Well, I guess I never turned the lights on. That's something I like to do when I kick it back to you all. Changes the vibe, right? So, how were your conversations? Do you agree with Justin Bieber? Do you not believe in Nirvana? I think he just said that because it rhymed nicely in the song. So yeah, what is Nirvana? Have we figured this out? What is enlightenment? What did the Buddha achieve? What did the Buddha achieve? Enlightenment? You guys figure this out?
Doesn't he like achieve like a knowledge, like wisdom, and like how do you say it? Like peace of mind?
Mm-hmm. Knowledge, wisdom, peace. Those are all good things. Yeah, I think so. And we can get even more specific, but I think that's a great start. And, you know, again, I'm sort of being playful with this idea of Justin Bieber, But if Justin Bieber asked you, you know, what is nirvana? I've claimed in a song that I don't believe in it. It's actually a very hard question to answer, right? In fact, across Buddhist traditions, you get a lot of different explanations. There's certain things that they all agree about, which we'll talk about next class with the Four Noble Truths. But there are a lot of variations of emphasis, let's say, in terms of enlightenment. So Ellie said, what was it? Wisdom, knowledge, peace. I maybe have mixed up one of those, but I like that. So peace implies that whatever was bothering him before is gone, right? And so that kind of ties in with one of my questions, which is what does he overcome? Wisdom and knowledge implies something new. He has some sort of new knowledge, which I think is absolutely the case. So we could kind of go in either direction. What did he overcome? What was the deal with Mara? What was Mara trying to kind of elicit out of him? And what did he prove that he had had achieved, let's say, in order to achieve this peace that Ellie was talking about? What was the deal with the daughters and the army and that weird sort of interview at the end? Jocelyn? Yes. And so previously, this is something we talked about in one of our groups, but he might have been struggling with desire and just sort of pushing it down. And I'm sure you guys all know that you can do that. It's something actually that polite society expects you to do all the time, right? Have you ever been like really hungry and at a restaurant and saw somebody eating nice food next to you, right? In polite society, you don't reach across and grab some of their fries because you're hungry, right? You suppress that desire because you're polite, right? And we've all learned how to do that. But the Buddha, theoretically at least, according to this, he's entered this new space, right? This new way of being where that's gone, right? That temptation is gone, that desire is gone. And Mara is coming in, and Jocelyn just used this word test, I think she just used this word. And in our group, we talked about this as a test to see, is that true, right? Did he make it to this place where he no longer desires things? And it's almost unimaginable. One reason I'm spending so much time on this is you can fool yourself into thinking you get beyond your desires, but what you're really doing, frankly, just speaking from experience, is pushing them down, right? They're still there, they'll be back. And so to really achieve this state beyond desire is unimaginable. I cannot imagine it. And I spend a lot of time thinking about this story, to be honest, right? Taught this several times now. I've read this in many languages. I've thought about this very deeply, and it's still unimaginable to reach this state beyond desire. I cannot imagine it. And so it obviously very remarkable. And so that's one takeaway. The flip side to that, what would you say is the other emotion that he's overcome? So one is kind of this indulgence, this desire. It's really a sexual attraction, right? Which is a very deep, right? If you ever study biology, a very deep drive in all organisms. And so that's what, if they had to pick the single strongest desire, and of course they did, it would be that, right? Is sexual attraction. And so it's this one that he's really learned to overcome. It's kind of unbelievable. And so what was the other one? What would you say is the other emotion in that second scene where they're shooting the arrows at him and marching the army out and the waves are crashing and all that sort of stuff? What sort of emotion is Mara trying to elicit out of the Buddha there?
Fear.
Fear, yeah. And, if there are a lot of lists in Buddhism, I try to limit the lists because I know lists are sort of boring and hard to remember. But at the same time, a certain number of lists are important. And there are 3 and sometimes 5 negative emotions. The really core 3, and the only reason I'm seeing this in the movie is because I already know them. But the first one is desire, this lust, this attachment. That's the first one. The second one is usually anger, but I like fear. Actually, I didn't see who said it, but somebody said fear. Fear is part of the list of 5, but it doesn't make the cut in 3, because I think they sort of can collapse together, right? Didn't Yoda say fear leads to anger leads to hate leads to suffering? Yeah, Star Wars rips off a lot of Buddhism, but that's okay. I think it's part of the success. And so, the second one is this kind of fear, hate, anger, right? If somebody threatens you, at least in my experience, my feeling is I want to kind of puff up. I guess the flight or fight, isn't that the language? Flight or fight response. I kind of puff up and want to fight them, or maybe I'll shrink down and run away. I don't know, some combination of the two. And so the Buddha, of course, does not have this flight or fight response either. And the reason there is this language of flight or fight is because it really is biological, right? Within our hormonal systems, your adrenaline starts pumping, your body changes, right, under these circumstances. It's not like a choice that you make. I'm going to decide to fight this person, right? This is something you get sucked into. It happens in an instant, right? And we can think about, oh, I would choose not to fight that person in that situation. But the reality is, you're not making a lot of choices. When it's time to fight, you just kind of do it. And so in this case, again, we see Keanu Reeves unaffected, right? If those were real arrows, his body would be gone, but he doesn't seem to be too concerned about that, right? So again, really a remarkable space to have achieved, beyond fear, beyond anger, beyond desire. And then the third one is the most confusing. I tried to ask one group about it. I think Sam gave a nice response, trying to make sense of this weird conversation. You guys know what I'm talking about? He's sitting and talking to himself, but it's not really himself. It's actually Mara. What do you think is the emotion? And this is a hard question, but what do you think is the negative emotion that's being depicted there? What is being rooted out? We've already dealt with desire, fear, anger. What is that third one? Can we complete the list? Ignorance. How do you know ignorance? That's amazing. Yeah. Did you already know this list of three? Did you already know ignorance? You did it. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So that is the third one. Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Maybe the movie is more clear than I give it credit, but yeah, very good, Bill. Ignorance. Exactly. It's how do you look at the world, right? Because in some ways it all, this is really more of a Tibetan tradition explanation, but it's the one I know and really, frankly like the best. Where do all of these problems come from, right? There's a list of 3, there's a list of 5, there's a list of all kinds of lists, but if you have to choose one, what is it? It really is what Brielle just said, it's ignorance. Is looking at the world in the right way will free you from all of these problems. And that third one was a test. Is he looking at the world in the right way? Mara is saying, you are in my house. You are in my world of samsara. My world is what's real. And Keanu is just saying, no, I'm not, bro. You don't own me. You didn't make this house. Maybe you made it for some people. Maybe you made it for me when I was a kid, but I'm not in your house anymore. I'm not in your world of samsara anymore, your world of illusion. And so we've got 3 minutes, and this final posture, touching the earth, right? We see it here with the extra long arm. Maybe I'll hit the lights again. Extra long arm touching the earth, the cover of our book, right? You probably recognize this is the cover of our book. The Buddha is touching the earth. It's a very iconic, it's not the only posture that the Buddha takes, but it's a very famous one. Why is he touching the earth here? What does this signify? In the movie, it was during that third scene, right? Mara is talking to him. What is he proving? What is he doing when he touches the earth? Let's see, his mountain is strong. Mara starts threatening him. Yeah, this is the quote. I'll put it in the chat. It's kind of cool. Mara, if you had made this progress toward enlightenment, it's sort of implied. If you read the whole conversation, it makes more sense. So I added in there. If you had made this progress toward enlightenment, you would have had a witness, but you have no witness now. And so although you make these claims, you have no proof. So what is the Buddha's proof of his enlightenment? Huh?
Yeah, so he calls to witness, so he has no witness, he calls to witness the earth.
The earth is my witness. Yeah, the earth is witness for all living beings. It is partial toward all existence. The earth shall be my witness. I do not lie. You, earth, I call you here as my witness here. And so as we think about what are the obstacles to enlightenment, right? So all the things we've talked about, the list of 5, I don't think I'm giving you the full list yet. Desire, hatred, jealousy. Is fear one of them? Yeah, fear is one of them. And then ignorance, right? Ignorance is kind of that core one. And so, actually, no, fear is not one of them. It's pride. That's what it is. Pride. Manja. So pride is one that sort of fits in here, but a little on its own as well. So all of these things causing us problems. Another thing that might cause us problem is self-doubt, right? And this is one that's real for me. I don't know, you guys might be different than I am, but it's like this imposter syndrome kind of thing. Everybody else is smarter than you. Everybody else can do it better than you, right? Here's Mara putting voice to that, right? It's like, oh, you claim you're so great, Siddhartha. Who can vouch for you? Who can prove that you have done all these amazing things, life after life after life? And the Buddha doesn't even have to respond, but he does, and he points to the earth, right? The earth has been there the whole time. The proof is in the pudding, right? It's something, I said this to a friend of mine in Frisbee one time, and he brought it up like years later. He's like, you know what, that really stuck with me. When you play Frisbee, you go to practice. When you go to practice, you throw a Frisbee thousands of times over the years, thousands of times, thousands and thousands of times. You practice drills, you practice cutting, you practice running, you practice jumping, you practice, throwing against defense and all these sorts of things, right? The Buddha did all of that over thousands of lifetimes. He accumulated thousands of, moments of good karma, let's say, thousands of deeds of good karma, just like the karma stories we talked about. All of this culminating in this one particular moment. So what I said to one of my friends in a tense Frisbee moment where he's like picking up the disc and pressure's on, end of the game, is like, how many times have you thrown this before, right? You can rest on that. You can think, I've practiced this thing so many times. I've done this so many times. And that's exactly what the Buddha is doing here, right? He's saying, look, brother, the proof is in the pudding. I've put in the time, I've put in the effort. This is the culmination of thousands of lifetimes, right? And Sydney brought up the vow earlier, right? He made this vow long ago, and it's only now, finally, that it's coming to fruition. Okay, we are out of time now. That was a good conversation. We can pick up with enlightenment next time, finish things up. But I think we mostly covered what I wanted to talk about, so that's good. And then we can go into his teaching. So again, next time we will not finish this book quite yet. Next time we will read Kyon, and we will talk about the Four Noble Truths, which is the Buddha's first teaching. So have a good day. Look out for the storm that's brewing. And have fun.
Bye.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
I'll see you
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.